He came home, you know what I'm saying? I'm actually surprised that he did come home because Meech had a lot of power. You know, Meech had a lot of power, Meech had a lot of money. You know what I'm saying? Usually those types never make it home, but Meech has been given a second chance.
The Black Mafia Family, a name whispered in the streets and plastered all over the headlines. You know, when you requested a deep dive on this, I gotta say, I was pretty hyped their story has it all. Crime, hip-hop, family drama, the stuff of legends, really. But also, we're talking about real lives impacted here. So let's dive into the world of Big Meech and the BMF, especially with this recent news about his release.
And it is news that has sparked, well, a lot of debate and speculation, especially considering the scale of the BMS operations and the sentence Big Meech, Demetrius Flannery, was handed back in 2008.
Right, 30 years, that's not a slap on the wrist.
No, not at all.
So for a lot of people, this transfer to a halfway house seems like it came out of nowhere. What does this actually mean for Big Meech right now?
It's important to understand that a halfway house is not about a lighter sentence. It's more about it's a necessary step in the reintegration process for a lot of inmates. It acts as a bridge between the highly structured environment of prison and the complexities of life outside. He'll have a chance to work, participate in programs, and start that long process of rebuilding his life,
Yeah.
all while still being under supervision, of course.
So it's not like he's suddenly a free man.
Right.
And to be clear, according to the Federal Bureau of Prisons, his official release date isn't until January 27, 2026.
That's correct.
It's interesting, this in-between space he's in, out of federal prison, but not entirely free. It does make you wonder, how did he even end up behind bars in the first place? What led to the downfall of this empire that he built? To really understand the magnitude of what Big Meech built and ultimately lost, we have to rewind back to the 80s, to the streets of Detroit where it all began for the Flannery brothers.
Detroit in the 80s, it was a city in flux, grappling with economic hardship, social change. It was a tough time. And it was against this backdrop that Demetrius, Big Meech, and his brother Terry, they started building their network, their empire.
Yeah.
What started as, a relatively small-time operation, it quickly gained momentum.
They had this ambition, this drive that, couldn't be contained.
Yeah.
And they tapped into something, because their network, the Black Mafia Family, it just exploded.
It really did. By the time they were on the radar of the Drug Enforcement Agency, the DEA, the BMF had become a nationwide criminal enterprise. We're talking over 500 members, millions and millions of dollars flowing through their hands,
Well,
connections to some of the most powerful drug cartels in the world.
it's almost hard to fathom. $270 million in profits, according to estimates. But they didn't just stop at drugs, did they? They had this whole other side, this foray into the music industry with BMF Entertainment. What was that all about?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. It wasn't enough for them to just operate in the shadows, you see.
Right.
They craved legitimacy, the allure of the limelight, BMF Entertainment. It was their way to launder money, yes, but it was also a power play. It was a way to insert themselves into the heart of hip-hop culture.
And they weren't just dabbling. They signed artists, produced music, basically used the label as a front to clean their drug money, right? Yeah. It's crazy how intertwined the underworld and the music industry became, through BMF.
It's a tactic as old as time, really, using a legitimate business to mask illegal activities. But the scale at which the BMF operated, the audacity of it all, that's what caught the attention of law enforcement. The DEA had been building their case for years, meticulously piecing together the puzzle of the BMF's operations.
And it all came to a head in 2005, right?
2005 was the beginning of the end for the Black Mafia family.
Yeah.
The DEA, with all the evidence they'd gathered, they conducted a massive raid, arresting dozens of BMF members, seizing millions in assets, sent shockwaves through both the criminal underworld and the music industry.
It's like something you'd see in a movie, that raid.
I know.
But with real-life consequences, obviously. What happened to Big Meech and his brother? They weren't caught in that raid, were they?
No, they weren't apprehended in that initial raid, but the writing was on the wall. They knew the Fed were closing in.
Yeah.
Facing the very real prospect of spending the rest of their lives behind bars, they decided to cut a deal.
So they pled guilty.
Yes. Both brothers pled guilty to running a criminal enterprise, effectively admitting to their roles in this massive drug trafficking operation.
Wow.
It was a high-stakes gamble, a calculated move to try and avoid an even longer sentence.
And that plea landed them each with a 30-year sentence. At that point, it seemed like the book was closed on the Black Mafia family. But as we know, Big Meech is now on the verge of a new chapter. It's almost hard to believe, with this move to a halfway house, that we're now talking about Big Meech potentially turning over a new leaf.
Yeah.
His lawyer has even said that he's used his time behind bars for personal growth and is ready for this new chapter.
It's certainly a narrative that sparks curiosity.
Right.
And while rehabilitation is such a complex and individual journey,
Right.
it is important to remember that the prison system, ideally, aims to provide those opportunities for reflection and growth.
It does make you wonder about the person behind the headlines. And speaking of which, we can't ignore the elephant, or should I say the BMF, in the room. 50 Cent's incredibly successful docuseries and TV series that have brought the family story back into the spotlight.
Yeah.
What's your take on the impact of these shows?
It's fascinating, isn't it? The BMF story, a blend of crime, ambition, hip-hop culture. It's got all the elements of a captivating drama. And it sparked a lot of conversation about the ethics of profiting off these narratives, particularly those that are rooted in criminal activity.
And it gets even more complex when you factor in that Big Meech's own son, Lil Meech, is actually portraying him in the series. It's almost like art imitating life, imitating art.
Absolutely. It blurs those lines in a way that I think is both fascinating and at times uncomfortable. On one hand, you have the potential to humanize these individuals.
Right.
Individuals who were often demonized by headlines.
Yeah.
Viewers might develop a deeper understanding of their motivations, their struggles, even if they don't condone their actions. But then on the other hand, there's a fine line between humanization and, glorification.
Especially within a genre like hip-hop, where the lines between reality and persona can be so fluid.
Exactly. And that's the heart of the debate surrounding these shows. Do they provide a cautionary tale, highlighting the consequences of a life of crime?
Right.
Or do they inadvertently glamorize it, particularly for younger audiences? It's a question, I think, without any easy answers.
It certainly gives you a lot to ponder. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of the Black Mafia family, we're left with a story that's still being written. From the streets of Detroit to a nationwide empire, their impact on the criminal underworld and hip-hop culture is undeniable.
It is. And with Big Meech's release on the horizon, the question remains, is this truly the end of an era, or will we see the BMF legacy resurface in some unexpected form?
Only time will tell. And that, I think, is what makes this story so captivating. It's a reminder that truth can be stranger than fiction, and that sometimes the most compelling narratives are those that leave us with more questions than answers. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking those tough questions, and we'll catch you on our next deep dive.